Welcome back. Now let's go back to August and September of 1994. Of course, local football and rugby league finals as well as rugby union finals. And of course, the Knights made the reserve grade finals once again.
The Region 2 Netball Final Series began this morning at National Park, with 5 teams still in contention for this year's title. Gosford and Newcastle's number 2 side played each other in the final for the right to play Charlestown in the grand final. Gosford emerged the victor 26-23, giving itself a chance at reversing its major semi-final loss to Charlestown. Playing in the red, Gosford appeared to have benefited from the extra match, leading 13-8 at half-time. Unperturbed, Charlestown rallied, and with just 10 minutes remaining was a goal behind. However, their charge was halted, with Gosford goalkeeper Alison Urquhart proving a formidable opponent, while goal attack Sonia Walsh and shooter Sally Smith made the most of their opportunities. The 23-19 win was Gosford's first victory in Region 2 and now has them eyeing the Sydney competition.
That's the next step for us. We've got a lot of good representative players coming up. We had a few playing today, and I hope you'll be seeing us on Sydney TV as well.
After last Thursday's announcement that the embattled Newcastle Breakers had been handed a lifeline, the club has received expressions of interest for sponsorship. But like the proposed buyer of the club's land and facilities, those negotiations have been kept a secret. The intended purchaser, described as being soccer-friendly, is working out the finer details of the sale with the club.
Once they are completed, I'm sure that we will be in a position to announce that the sale has been successful.
That's expected sometime next week, as is the announcement of a coach and new recruits. The Breakers keen to secure the services of 2 or 3 key players with an eye to strengthening their midfield. Warren Spink, who was one of 8 players contracted to the club, has returned from playing in Malaysia, while teammate Darren Stewart is still overseas, but has indicated he is prepared to take a pay cut to assist the club's search for new talent.
Darren has instructed his Newcastle-based manager to renegotiate his contract, and he's going to negotiate his contract down, and hopefully that will assist the club in our financial plight that we have at the moment.
Okay, and finally, already a good response. After being knocked out of the Lightning series by the Cannons in Sydney and Canberra over the weekend, the Falcons received some good news at training, with Derek Rucker and Terry Dozier returning to the court. Both were injured during the recent All-Star series, but will be fit to play the 2 matches in Perth against visiting American team Athletes in Action.
Everett Stevens is going to be playing with Athletes in Action, and Mario Donaldson, who played with the King, 2 good mates of mine, and they'll be looking forward to playing against them in a fun game.
All but the injured Paul Simpson will go to Perth, which will be the Falcons' last match before they resume their NBL campaign against Canberra at home on Friday week. Currently 8th in the league, and with the aim of winning 5 of their remaining 8 matches, the Perth trip isn't being taken lightly.
There are key games for us in our preparations for the last half of the season. We'll have basically our full team, with the exception of Paul Simpson. So this is a real good test for us.
It's going to be important for this team. We really got to get our thing going, get in rhythm for the run to the playoffs. So we're going to take this serious.
Many are saying the 52-16 thrashing by Canberra was the nail in the coffin for the Knights' top 5 quest. A critical blow too for coach David Waite, but he isn't about to throw in the towel. He'll be reapplying for the job next year.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to take the side. The signs for 1995 are very, very healthy. This is probably one of the best set-up football clubs in the Winfield Cup.
Waite believes the side can still make the semis, but they'll need some luck with the more fancy teams losing their final games. Meanwhile, the Western Samoan Rugby Union team arrived in Newcastle this afternoon for their clash with New South Wales on Wednesday. Coached by Peter Schuster, brother of former Knight John Schuster. Several of the Western Samoans have previously been approached to play in Newcastle. While the Knights won't be making any direct contact this visit, management is keeping an eye on the tourists.
You need to be in the marketplace, and you always need to have your eye on what's happening.
Drivers had to battle freezing conditions in the forest surrounding the Derwent Valley north of Hobart. Newcastle's Michael Guest in a Lancer was all fired up to extend his overnight lead, and he careered away to win by nearly 2 minutes. It was the Lancers' day with Ed Ordinsky coming in second. Coffs Harbour banana farmer Wayne Hoy finished a further minute behind in third. Neil Bates and Stuart Reid were forced out with mechanical problems. The win gives Guest the lead in the Australian Rally Series, but is still wide open with 3 rounds to go. Drivers move on to Perth next month for the highest scoring rally of the year. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Having won its first premiership in almost 50 years last season, Curry's aspirations of defending the title diminished yesterday, Toronto maintaining its unbeaten record against the Bulldogs this season. Despite a bright start, Curry conceded 4 tries 10 minutes either side of half-time. Confident his side can bounce back, captain coach Steve Linnane admitted the Premiers are under immense pressure to perform.
The expectations have been high all year, and the supporters are right behind us, but you can feel that added pressure. This week's a do or die. You lose, you're gone.
They face an informed South Newcastle who advanced with a 30-16 win over North Nelson Bay on Saturday. Adding to Curry's woes, centre Glenn Messenger is in doubt for the match after sustaining a bad head injury against Toronto. He and Curry have just 4 days to regroup, presenting Linnane with a challenging task.
Everybody's a little bit down after yesterday, but you don't get the opportunity very often, to play in a first-grade grand final, regardless of what competition it is. And I think that's all the motivation we need.
Meanwhile, in the Central Coast competition, the entrants confront Woy Woy in the minor semi-final, while Umina Ettalong play Wyong in the major semi.
It was the match of the round, and of course it was local rugby league that of course had to be played.
Quinton's omission is the only change to the Curry side, which lost to Toronto last weekend and was welcome news to South Newcastle today. Underdogs all season, Souths already have a victory over the Bulldogs at Curry. Despite this, Souths coach Richard Jones isn't underestimating the Premiers.
It's a one out of the box playing Curry at Curry, but they're very passionate about their football. And if we're going to win tonight, we just have to match them in the enthusiasm department nice and early, and then that's all that I ask of the players. I'm sure they're very, very keen, and they're champing at the bit.
Western Toronto will play in tomorrow's major semi at Harker Oval, the winner advancing to the grand final. The week off has assisted the minor premiers, with Tim Perrin, Mick Reid and Peter Chapman all returning after injury. The lingering memory of last year's loss in the closing stages of the grand final is the motivation Wests need. With the Johns brothers once again in outstanding form, the Knights look set to spoil Canterbury's minor premiership aspirations. Andrews angled dart and inside ball, giving Adam Muir the opening try of the match. The Knights held their 8-2 lead until 2 minutes before half-time, the strength of Jared McCracken opening the way for Darryl Halligan. Within 6 minutes of the second term, the Bulldogs had raced to an 18-6 lead, Terry Lamb thriving on the ball skills of Jim Dimmick and then Jason Smith. Lamb posted his third before the Knights started a belated comeback. Shane Vincent scoring on debut, while Russell Wire put Newcastle within 6 points. But all hope was gone with McCracken intercepting on the bell. Newcastle hoping nothing further comes from this tackle midway through the second half. Newcastle underwent final preparations at the entertainment centre this morning. The Falcons wary of the sharpshooting cannons. Captain Terry Dozier likened Canberra to athletes in action. The visiting American side Newcastle played in Perth last week.
Even though they have Jason Reese, who's a pretty good inside player, we still have to be conscious of the outside shot. So we really worked on our defensive effort over in Perth, and I think we made a lot of progress in that.
Meantime, in rugby union, Wanderers will be chasing a piece of history tomorrow. The club has already won 4 minor premierships this season, a win in reserve grade making it 5. In the last round of the competition, Maitland faced Bullaroo, Hamilton play Merewether Carlton, Singleton confront Mayfield East, Tech Port take on University, while the Waratahs host Wanderers. In soccer, trials will be held at Cardiff tomorrow for the Northern New South Wales Lions team to contest the National Youth Soccer League. In the Northern New South Wales League, Western hosts West Wallsend tomorrow, while the remaining 4 games will be played on Sunday. And in Aussie rules, Warners Bay and Nelson Bay will contest tomorrow's final at number 1 Sports Ground for the right to play Cardiff in the grand final.
It was an early morning stretch out for the Knights at Marathon Stadium, a team luncheon and a round of golf in the afternoon. The aim was to relax the team while focusing on the Manly clash. The Knights will be looking for a good start on Sunday, this proving a vital ingredient to Newcastle's successes this year. While coach David Waite hopes for a solid start, he's realistic about the task ahead.
They've got a couple of fresh forwards coming back who didn't play last week. They've got a very, very strong pack of forwards, which we have to get on top of. And the Lions show at the moment is a very dominant one in relation to Manly's success.
Waite has made some changes to the lineup. Bobby Ross makes his first grade debut, Herman promoted from reserve grade, with Nathan Barnes moved to the centres. On the coaching issue and speculation there may be changes to the Knights coaching lineup if David Waite retains the top job, Waite says that's up to the board.
Will I make changes to the coaching lineup? Well, let's not worry about changes to anything just yet. Let's see who's coaching the side.
Reserve grade coach Robert Finch said today Waite had mentioned to him there would be changes if he got the job, adding Waite hadn't personally told Finch it would involve him. But Finch said with only 2 other coaches in the club, he was concerned about his future.
Tony Herman wasn't able to train last night, while Robbie O'Davis is still hopeful of playing despite a knee injury. One player fit and eagerly awaiting Sunday's clash is 21-year-old law student Shane Vincent. The former Australian schoolboy representative will make his first appearance in the top grade, and with Nathan Barnes, will take on the Bulldogs centre combination of Stephen Hughes and Kiwi international Jared McCracken.
They've come off a loss last week, and they're cracking out a quiet game, so we'll be out to make amends this week, and hopefully it's not my expense, but I'll be able to do my best on Sunday, and hopefully I'll walk off happy with my game.
Vincent is the leading try scorer in reserve grade, 5 points clear of Canterbury at the top of the competition table. With just 3 games remaining and first grade out of contention, the Knights have resisted the temptation of attempting to qualify more players for the reserve grade semi-finals.
To drop first graders back is to denigrate the performance of reserve grade. One of the things that I'll make sure as long as I'm in charge of this place is that we won't cheapen a first grade jumper in Newcastle.
Since their inception, the Knights have won 6 of the 7 final home matches. Ironically, the only loss was to Canterbury 3 years ago. With this in mind, Waite and the side are determined to give their fans, which have increased by more than 5,000 at home matches this season, something to cheer at their final home game of the season.
Those 20,000 people that have been here on average every time in 1994 must really enjoy their football here, and I can assure you that the last one this year will be something special as well.
Sydney drivers filled the first 4 placings in the Junior Clubland final, James Courtney prevailing in one of the most entertaining races of the day, Alan Jones's son Christian finishing 8th. But the most dominant performance came from Melbourne's Australian champion Ben Savage, the 22-year-old taking the Clubland light class, adding to his tally of 5 state and national titles. Newcastle's Wayne Stoddart finished second in the Piston Port division, while Scott Withers won the cadet class, with Peter Lawler finishing a gallant fifth after starting from the back of the grid in the Clubman Light. The best efforts from Northwest drivers came from Adam Barnes and Stephen Rappman in the Junior J Light division, which was won by Sydney's Ryan Driscoll. Having staged the Northwest's biggest ever kart meeting, the Tamworth Club is now bidding for the Nationals. That decision will not be made until later in the year, most now focusing on this year's Australian titles in Lithgow on October 10. Toronto qualified for the grand final with a courageous 24-16 win against Western Suburbs on Sunday. The Scorpions' victory achieved with just 12 players after Simon Cook was dismissed by referee Tony Farrell for punching midway through the first half. Club officials concede Cook's absence in the grand final would be a blow.
Very classy player. He's scored 19 tries for us this year, and I'd say one of the most dangerous attacking players in the competition.
Cook also appeared in the referee's match report for allegedly gouging an opponent, a charge also denied by Toronto. But it seems Wests are keen to continue Saturday's battle with the judiciary tonight, viewing video evidence today with the possibility of asking the league to cite other Toronto players.
The disappointing thing is that you can have a drink with their players after the game and everything's fine, and the officials want to take it to the boardroom, and games are decided on the football field, and that's where we'd like to leave it.
Meantime, in the Central Coast competition, the entrants down Woy Woy in the minor semi-final, while in Group 21, Singleton advanced to the final with a 2-point win over Muswellbrook.
Lightweights Justin Rousel and Darryl Howells both tipped the scales during today's weigh-in at 61.05 kilograms, just under the 61.23 kilo mark. In the Australian light strawweight division, defending title holder Lyle Appo from Brisbane came in almost 2 kilograms below the 47 kilo limit. His opponent and fellow Queenslander Ricky Budgeon just scraped in. There were anxious moments for the junior bantamweight contenders, both having to spend time in the sauna to taper down. Colin Kidd Nelson did, but Lucas Matthews had to lose everything before getting the green light. Russian-born Kostya will box an exhibition bout with Steve Johnston, who's been sparring with Pedro Sanchez, Zhu's opponent in the World Junior Welterweight Eliminator in Melbourne in August. It's this fight Newcastle lost because of not having a facility big enough to finance the bout.
Just this fight in Melbourne ends at $600,000. That's a hell of a lot of money to come by. You've got to get it basically through ticket sales. It would have meant, had we tried to do the fight here, we would have been charging something like $150 ringside, down to about $60. And I don't think Newcastle really could have afforded those prices.
However, Morty says if Kostya wins, his challenge fight for the World Championship could be held outdoors in Newcastle, possibly Marathon Stadium. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Terry Pastamoglu was back at work at Jerry Wumbles this morning, hours after achieving a career highlight, which included this year's Players Player and Best and Fairest awards. The former Australian schoolboy outpolled West halfback Tony Price for the Best and Fairest award, the front rower at a loss to explain his outstanding form.
It's not much training, I think. It's just I've just been prepared to sort of take the ball up and do the hard work for the rest of the side, and they sort of follow. And when the side follows, you can't go wrong with it.
A former junior with West in Sydney, Pastamoglu has played a crucial role in the Scorpions' qualification for the grand final. After 3 years with the Knights and 2 with Central, he signed with Toronto last year. His eagerness to play alongside Mal Graham, a major influence.
Mal Graham, I thought, captain coach, he's a bloke who get amongst it all and help us out, which he does, and he has done all year and last year, and it'd be great to win a grand final with him.
Having had such an influence over Pastamoglu, it was fitting that Graham was named Coach of the Year. His efforts both on and off the field improving with age.
He's outstanding. He's tickled pink, and he's a true veteran and a true champion.
Meantime, Cessnock's Trevor Crowe was named Representative Player of the Year, while Waratah Mayfield's Craig Foggo was Rookie of the Year. Competition resumed this morning after a coaching clinic yesterday. The nation's better juniors using the resources of Newcastle's Jane Gordon and Bob Finance to enhance their skills. Queensland was once again among the goals, beating the Northern Territory 2-0. The Queensland girls also continued their good form with a 3-0 victory, while their New South Wales counterparts, including the Hunters' Rosalind Birch, overpowered the Northern Territory 2-0. Ashley Deveridge from Adamstown and Gloucester's Bradley Sampson were part of the New South Wales boys' 3-0 win over the Northern Territory. The round-robin series continues tomorrow. Organisers confident of finding future elite players, with the tournament playing a role in the development of several internationals, such as Shelley Andrews and Alison Annan.
It's only a matter of some 6-7 years ago that she was at a carnival such as this. They do come through, and certainly we're hoping that they will continue to come through in perhaps in increasing numbers.
"27-year-old Jeff Blandon is a basketball coach with impressive credentials to match the challenge ahead.
Well, I played college basketball in Lexington, Kentucky. I started for 4 years in school. I also have got a double degree, one in business and one in physical education, to where I'm out here developing young kids to become a lot better basketball players, actually.
Hailing from Pennsylvania College, Jeff will spend the next 6 months coaching all grades of Cessnock's basketball club.
We bring skills from America that we haven't got in Australia, and the kids just simply adore them and they listen.
The main idea is to promote the sport among the area's potential young players, and already word has spread there's an expert in town.
We've been pretty successful. We went from about 18 to about 31 or 32 in 2 weeks.
While spending most of his time visiting schools and running extra training sessions, Jeff plans to keep an eye out for rising stars.
We're also going to have a couple kids that are going to go play high school basketball, and one kid's going to play college basketball just from right here in Cessnock and Maitland in the States, so I get to watch them progress in the States as well.
First points in the match came in the 6th minute via the boot of Curry hooker Phil Williams. Moments later, a certain further 2 points turned to 4. Quick thinking giving Daniel Linane Curry's first try. Toronto centre Simon Cook then inspired the fight back, setting up tries for Tobin and winger Paul Bacon, giving the Scorpions a 10-6 half-time lead. Toronto's charge continued in the first 10 minutes of the second term, Gavin Cook posting his side's third before captain coach Mal Graham scored arguably the try of the match. Curry crossed for 2 late tries, putting some respectability into the scoreline, but fittingly Graham scored Toronto's final try, a 12-point victory setting up a major semi-final clash with West next weekend. In reserves this afternoon, Maitland 16 beat West 14, while West down south 27-10 in thirds.
Nobody knows better about how tough Winfield Cup football can be than Tony Butterfield. In an innocent-looking tackle, the big second rower broke his hand in 3 places. Tests today confirming he's out for the rest of the year.
The season's over for me. I'm looking forward to the off-season, a break of a couple of weeks, although I've had a few breaks of late.
After sitting out a lengthy suspension earlier this year and injury worries keeping him out for an entire year 2 seasons ago, Butterfield has had a bad run. Also on the end of the knocks was Brad Godden, taking a heavy hit from Manly's Carroll. And more injury problems with Jamie Ainscough also in the wars. The Knights gave their all in the 32-16 loss to the Sea Eagles, the forwards showing they can match it with any pack. The incentive to regain team pride and also to impress Manly and Aussie coach Bobby Fulton, the Chief in particular running back into form. Meanwhile, many of the players have thrown their support behind Coach Waite, despite rumours his days are numbered with the club.
We're professionals, we get on with the job. I'm fairly confident that David will retain the coaching position anyway, personally. But from the players' point of view, we're fairly relaxed and concentrating on football.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Sam Grant was back on home turf today, but after a stunning performance in the World Youth Championships, it may not be for long. A member of the Belmont club, Grant was the leading hitter in the championships, batting a remarkable 471 through the series, earning him a place in the World Youth All-Star team.
Before the tournament, I was sort of thinking it would be great to make the world side, and wasn't really expecting things, and just kept on going from day to day, and it happened. So.
Grant already holds a scholarship to the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra and is signed to play in the Hunter Eagles' inaugural season in the National League. But with around 200 scouts watching the Youth Championships and the Eagles having an association with Montreal, the talented left-hander could soon find himself back in America, mixing it with Aussie trailblazers such as Graham Lloyd and Dave Nelson.
That's what I want to do. I want to head back over there and sign pro. And hopefully it should sort of happen within the next couple of months.
In the meantime, the Eagles are intent on making the most of his talents.
Yeah, Sam, he's one of our young players with a great lot of potential. He's just come off a tour to the United States. He should be a big part of our offence this summer.
With 2 rounds remaining this season, there's still plenty to play for, particularly for juniors, with the Federation to select the Lions side to play in the National Youth League to be coached by Bruce Tracy. 3 teams remain in contention, the most important games in round 17 pitting West Wallsend against Wickham, and the top of the table clash between Edgeworth and Azuri. Some believing an upset will keep the competition alive.
People may not agree with me, but I think Edgeworth could pull one out of the hat this weekend, which obviously will mean that it'll all go down to the last game of the season.
The Falcons are teetering on the edge of the playoffs in 8th position. Coach Tom Wiseman says the team must win its next 2 games at home, as it will be a hard run to the finals.
We have 5 of our last 6 ball games on the road, so we're going to have to be able to go on the road and win some ball games also, which we feel we're very capable of doing.
The cause could be helped by the renewed pressure by 2 of Newcastle's biggest men to make the first 5. Grant Kruger has been a regular in 94, but Paul Kuiper has found form during practice games in the break to push for a spot in the starting lineup.
He's made it known to the coaches that he's ready to play and focused on these last ball games, and could mean a lot more playing time for him. We like to have his size in there. He's playing some very good basketball at the moment.
Canberra will be a tough assignment. The Falcons won their first encounter, but lost only a few weeks ago in the NBL Lightning Championships. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Both Messenger and Gordon were victims from last weekend's semis, while West centre Peter Chapman will take the field with an injured hand. Such is the commitment of the West side, which is motivated by the lingering memory of last year's grand final loss on the bell to Curry.
It's still a bit of a touchy subject with some of the boys, I suppose, but we'll see what happens on Sunday.
One of the more industrious players in the West pack, Perrin was critical of his own performance last week and is confident the grand final replay will bring the best out of himself and West. He denied there would be any square-ups for past incidents, but promised a physical game in the forwards, with the West backline giving the minor premiers the advantage.
So hopefully we'll be able to get on top of their forwards and get to our backline, which I think is the best backline in Newcastle, so probably play that wide.
Meantime, Wyong take on Yamina Ettalong in the Central Coast Major semi-final, while in Group 21, Scone play Aberdeen. Having successfully coached reserve grade to the grand final last year in the minor premiership this season, Finch was one of several who sought the Knights' first grade job, but was more than happy with last night's announcement.
The directors felt that Malcolm really was the man for the job, and I respect their decision for that. They offered me this position, a position which I've thought about for a long period of time, and I do feel that I appreciated their thoughts, and I'm happy to accept their position.
As football manager, Finch will meet Riley and Britton later this year to discuss the pre-season and recruitment, which is likely to become one of Finch's most important roles. He concedes the club will be looking to increase its depth, particularly in the outside backs. Having successfully coached Great Britain since 1987, really has established a rapport with some of Britain's leading players, which is also expected to benefit the Knights over the next 2 years.
I'm sure that Malcolm's got a good rapport with a lot of the high quality footballers in England. I'm not sure of their appetite, how much money they'd want. But obviously if they wanted to come out, Malcolm would entice them to come to Newcastle.
Meantime, current coach David Waite has refused to discuss the board's decision till after the last game this season. He's been forced to make several changes to the side through injury and suspension, with Brett Grogan promoted to first grade for Friday's game against Illawarra. The boisterous Curry crowd was silenced in the 7th minute when Steve Linnane became the first of many victims, re-injuring his left hand. He returned 10 minutes later, the first half marred by errors and penalties. Not surprisingly, the first try came through a mistake behind South's try line, the Bulldogs' Darryl Johnson pouncing on the scraps. South's reply was swift, Darren Ford's acceleration deceiving the Premiers, who led 6-4 at half-time. The niggle continued in the second term, but with the brute strength came the deft touch. Curry winger Darryl Williams' solo effort proving a match winner. A Linnane field goal gave Curry further breathing space, as did two late penalties by the wounded Phil Williams, who was sporting stitches in his head and mouth. He was one of several injury concerns, the captain playing down the damage to his arm.
I don't think it's anything serious, but it's just a bit of a jarring, so I hope I'll go to the physio on Monday and hopefully get it right for next week.
Held at the Old Bar Roadside Circuit, the championships attracted a strong field of competitors. Riders from across New South Wales, Canberra and Queensland travelled to Taree to compete, showing off some aggressive driving.
So we've got some of the top riders from all over the state.
Among them, Taree's own Ken Bisley. At just 16, he's been riding competitively since he was 4. He's already won several national titles in the junior ranks.
I'm riding a CR 250 and a CR 500.
Other top riders at today's event included current national champion Newcastle's Chris Watson and Steve Graham from Maitland.
Missouri's bid to wrap up the premiership started well when Wayne Bailey found the back of the net from the spot after David Lowe was brought down. An Edgeworth free kick gave the home side the equaliser. Gorang Simic deceiving Missouri's defence. More problems at the back for the Premiers when a misjudged high ball gave Edgeworth a 2-1 lead. But Missouri rallied with 3 further goals, including another penalty in the second half, to win their 3rd successive premiership. Also celebrating today, university hockey player Peter Sweeney. The former state player notched up his 500th Newcastle first grade appearance with a clash against Souths. But despite the occasion, spent the pre-match hours as only a true club stalwart could, helping in the canteen. At 42 years young, Sweeney is an integral part of university's push for successive premierships. He began playing for the defunct Central Club in 1965, and retirement is a word he doesn't understand. Plans to continue?
Plans to continue for as long as humanly possible. My fitness level is quite good at the moment, and I'm not carrying any injuries. I've been very lucky in that regard.
After a strong fight back from a seemingly hopeless position against Canterbury yesterday, Jared McCracken's intercept cruelled any chance of a Knights victory at their last home appearance of the season. But further disappointment for the Knights was avoided this morning. Knights forwards Darren Tracy and Adam Muir told they wouldn't have to attend league headquarters in Sydney tonight after this tackle on Simon Gillies.
Adam Muir and Darren Tracy, as we expected, have both been cleared of the referee's report in relation to a tackle that occurred in the second half of the game.
While the Knights are now preparing for this Saturday's match against Cronulla, persistent rumours continue over who will be at the helm of first grade next year. Several names have been mentioned, none confirmed. The Knights board to hold a special meeting on Thursday night, the coaching position on the agenda. In the meantime, the club has refused to elaborate.
There is a process in place for the appointment of a first grade coach for 1995. We're on track with that process, maybe a couple of days behind, and we expect to be in a position to make some announcements shortly.
A full replay of yesterday's game against Canterbury on NBN tonight from 10:30. Needing to win 5 of 8 games to qualify for the playoffs, the Falcons quickly opened up a 10-point margin. That was quickly eroded with uncharacteristic errors coupled with the Cannons' willingness to take the outside shots, giving the visitors a 41-36 halftime lead. But for captain Terry Dozier's performance, the Cannons' advantage would have been greater. Scoreless in the first half, Falcons guard Derek Rucker made an immediate impact on the match in the third quarter. From that point, Rucker dominated the game, finishing with 23 points, 10 assists and 8 rebounds. His prowess was infectious, the Falcons lifting in all departments, not letting anything get in their way, although Justin Withers did his best to upset Dozier, who finished with a match-high 29 points. Newcastle was also assisted by other results last night. The Townsville Suns' upset win over Illawarra, a major boost in the run to the playoffs.
North Nelson Bay in the yellow was 3 points down at the end of the first quarter, but 5 consecutive goals in 15 minutes in the second had them ahead 6-8-44 to 9-5-59 at half-time. They continued on in the same vein in the second half, outscoring Warners Bay by 10 goals to 5. Nelson Bay's Pat White was one of the best on the ground, while Andrew Lenert and Mark Black kicked 13 goals between them. In netball, Warners Bay T&C will play Aquatics in the grand final of Lakesides Association next Saturday. Warners Bay defeated Belmont in the Tartan Skirts 54-36 at the Belmont courts in this afternoon's preliminary final, after leading 27-17 at half-time. In the Newcastle competition, Gazzers won today's major semi-final against Brewers, while the minor semi was taken out by Mary Ellen Max. And finally, 150 intellectually disabled basketballers and tennis players took part in the opening day of the Special Olympics New South Wales Championships in Newcastle today. All will be attempting to qualify for the state team for the National Championships in Perth in November and December.
Following last night's board meeting, Chairman Terry Lawler appeared on NBN's League Extra program, confirming discussions had taken place with several candidates.
There were a number of potential candidates or candidates who were given an opportunity to present their credentials to the board, and we're expecting to be in a position and make an announcement on Monday.
He wouldn't elaborate on who the board had met with. The list of potential coaches now including Great Britain's Malcolm Reilly. Today, current coach David Waite was saying little.
I spoke to the board, and as far as that's concerned, there's been no statement from the board in relation to the position. I noticed with interest on your program last night that our chairman said they'll be making a decision hopefully Monday afternoon. So you know as much as I do.
Waite was more concerned with stopping the Knights' losing streak with a win against Cronulla at Caltex Field tomorrow.
Well, I don't think this is the worst football team the club's had, but if we lose 6 in a row, that's, I think, is our worst record, our worst losing streak. They don't deserve that.
Williams was on target early, banging over 2 long-range penalty goals for a 4-0 lead. In the 30th minute, a major blow to West with prop Anthony McDonald sent off for a high tackle. A further penalty gave Curry a 6-0 lead at half-time, which was reduced to 2 points when Peter Jenner scored for the minor premiers after a quick tap from Price. Price engineered West's second 5 minutes later, making the break and then backing up to score. He then potted a field goal, and with Curry seemingly out of the match, they reproduced last year's grand final effort, Darryl Johnson scoring from long range, Williams needing this to win the match. Curry will now play Toronto in next Sunday's grand final. Running into a stiff breeze, West showed all the enterprise in the opening stages, their expansive game backfiring when Toronto swooped on an error, the ever-present Gavin Cook backing up to score against the run of play. There was no luck in Toronto's second, quick hands giving Brett Ryder a clear run to the line, but it came at a price. Scorpion centre Simon Cook sent off for striking. It was also included in referee Farrell's match report for allegedly gouging an opponent. It failed to deter Toronto, Mal Graham giving them a 16-0 lead at the break. West half Tony Price sparked the revival, first setting up Steve Story and then scoring himself. A further try by hooker Steve Aletti levelled the scores at 16-all, but that's where the West charge halted, the Scorpions kicking a penalty goal and a late converted try to qualify for the grand final. The Knights' losing streak continued in the gloom of Caltex Field last night, but today the team's performance was once again overshadowed by the coaching situation. Discussing the match with Paul Harrigan on NBN's Footy Show today, Peter Sterling, who was approached about taking over Newcastle, preempted tomorrow's coaching appointment. A decision is expected late tomorrow afternoon. It's become a bit of a habit, with Western Suburbs the unfortunate victim. Last season, Phil Williams kicked a goal from the sideline to level the grand final, then potted an easier one to win Curry's first premiership in 48 years. A year later on the same ground yesterday, Newcastle's leading scorer for several seasons needed this kick to give his side a chance of defending their title.
All I thought was last year. Same spot, well, on the same side of the ground. Just had it a sweep and thank Christ the wind blows.
The conversion and 12-all victory ended quite a week for Williams. A debatable 29 years old, he yesterday completed his 200th first-grade game for Curry with 12 stitches in his mouth, only days after learning he was to become a father. Curry's grand final opponent is Toronto, a side which has beaten the Bulldogs 3 times this season, so Williams is intent on focusing on Sunday rather than yesterday's remarkable achievement.
We've still got a week to go. We've got 7 days of training. Hopefully next week we do the same thing. Touch wood.
Glenn Messenger definitely won't play in the grand final, while Todd Green is in doubt after this hit from Anthony McDonald, who will front the judiciary tonight. No such injury problems for Toronto. The 2-week break a blessing rather than a hindrance.
At the end of a long, arduous season, we've had a lot of bumps and bruises and had to have a few needles to get players on the field these last few competition games, but this 2 weeks off will basically just top us off.
In Group 21, Aberdeen down Scone, while on the Central Coast, Wyong upset Umina. The Blues led the first half. 30 minutes into the game, 2 penalties put them up 4-0. The Sharks finally got on the board through a penalty kick by Andrew Scraysbrook. After a trialless first half, Blues prop Tim Laurie extended the lead. A successful conversion extended the margin to 8 points, but the Sharks hit back in the best possible fashion, scoring right between the uprights. That made for an exciting finish, but Warhope's defence was too strong. The 2-point win effectively ending a 5-year period of Shark domination.
Oh yeah, I'm disappointed on the result, but I'm not disappointed in the effort. Everyone tried pretty hard, and they had to defend fairly well. And that's where they spent all their petrol up. And we looked a bit flat with the ball, and in the end, we'll never in front.
Warhope is hoping to break the record of the undefeated Foster-Tun Curry side in the finals this Sunday.
Barring injury, I thought we'd do all right. I thought we'd give them a good scare anyway, and I'd say we'll do that on Sunday. We'll give them a good shake.
Despite playing to mostly sell-out crowds this season, the Falcons are losing money. Over the last 3 years, the club owned by Sydney-based insurance brokers Horsell International has lost $900,000. To turn this around, Falcons management has been working on a restructuring plan. It's presented this to the National Basketball League, but before sanctioning it, the NBL wants the Falcons' operating budget reduced.
We have a commitment to reducing our capital expenditure or operating expenditure at this stage by $200,000. We have sought to make reductions in a number of areas. One of those areas, and certainly not the total, is of course in our operating expenses at the entertainment centre.
The Falcons have requested financial concessions from the centre's managers, the Newcastle Showground and Exhibition Centre Trust. Today, members of the Trust met to discuss the proposals. While unable to announce its decision until after a meeting with the Falcons tomorrow, things look positive.
The discussions all the way through were aimed at providing the maximum financial advantage to the Falcons to help them in their dilemma, obviously within the financial means of the Trust.
Part of the restructuring involves Horsell and Saunders reducing their ownership in the Falcons from around 80 to 15% and shifting the principal shareholders' role back to Newcastle via a group of local companies. Paul Tynan hopes to name those companies involved within the next few days.
If Curry is to win consecutive premierships, one of the many battles they will have to win around the field is in the front row, where Toronto have been so ably led in recent weeks by Player of the Year Terry Pastamoglu and Jim Bell. In a bid to overcome that pair, the Bulldogs are hopeful Brendan Dooley will return to the bench after breaking his arm more than 2 months ago.
He was in the rep teams early in the year and he's probably one of our better players, and all of a sudden broke his arm, which was a setback, but he hopes to be right this week.
If the Bulldogs do win on Sunday, they will go some way to emulating the feats of the South Newcastle Premiership side of 1964. As part of a grand final promotion by the league, that team will parade at number 1 Sports Ground in front of a 15 to 20,000 strong crowd dominated by Curry and Toronto supporters.
Their support base is certainly something that will spur the teams on to bigger and better things, and I feel that it's really going to be a top day there and a top day of entertainment as far as the rugby league's concerned.
Meantime, Western Suburbs prop Anthony McDonald, who was sent off in his side's 12-11 loss to Curry on Sunday, has had his hearing adjourned and won't appear before the judiciary again till next Wednesday. The umpires were kept busy in the opening minutes as both sides battled for superiority, which was eventually gained by underdogs Nelson Bay. They dominated territory and the run of play in the first half and would have been ahead by more than 17 points at the break, but for some inaccurate kicking with 15 behinds in the first half. Having lost 4 grand finals in their brief history, the Marlins were determined not to let this one slip, and with Pat White, Paul Reimer and Damien Push among the best on ground, they'd established a winning 6-goal break at three-quarter time. The final score, Nelson Bay 22-27, 159 to Cardiff's 13-9, 89. Meantime, in netball, Aquatics in the green skirts have taken out the Lakes Association's A-grade grand final with a 51-39 victory over Warners Bay T&Cs this afternoon. Captained by centre Gay Davies, Aquatics led 23-20 at the break and went on to win their second consecutive title. In the Newcastle Association, Brewers will play Gazers in next Saturday's grand final after beating Mary Ellen Max 36-34.
Despite a 6-game losing streak, David Waite believes his side can defeat Illawarra.
We're well aware that it's important for Illawarra. They have great emotions surrounding their last home game of the season. They are a chance, if Brisbane fall over, of making a semi-final playoff situation, so they've got a lot to play for. We've got nothing to lose. And
undeniably, the behind-the-scenes events of the last few weeks have taken a toll on the team and its coach.
I have no drama in accepting the change of direction for the club, but I feel in some ways when it's got to my family the way it has over the last fortnight, and we won't speculate as to the reason why it's got to them the way it has, I find that a lot harder to cope with.
While not wanting to comment on Malcolm Reilly's appointment as coach, the decision so late in the season has made things hard for Waite in planning his future.
In one way, probably yes, because there's no other Winfield Cup positions floating around.
And as for the speculation, Waite had been told by management he had the coaching job for next season and is now considering legal action.
I'm not really in a situation to make any comment. I don't see that any positives can come from that for the club or for the team on Friday night.
The Knights will train in Newcastle tomorrow before leaving for Illawarra.
Val Graham's form in the semi-final series belie his years. At 34, he's made 430 first-grade appearances. His contribution on and off the field instrumental in the Scorpions' push to the grand final.
My form's been outstanding, but I think that's been a reflection on the team.
Originally from Warhome, Graham played 45 matches with Newtown, playing in England and with West in Newcastle after his stint with the Jets in 1982-83. His first ever year as captain-coach at Toronto in 1991 yielded a premiership. 5 survivors playing on Sunday.
I would rate this 1994 side a better football side than the 1991 side, so hopefully we can go on and emulate the 91 side and take it out again.
A victory would give Graham his third premiership as a captain coach, his first with English club Oldham in the mid-80s. Such credentials have him eyeing higher honours, including the reserve grade position with the Knights.
I'll be sitting down possibly doing my level 3 coaching certificate and then weighing up the options from there, but I'd love to get a crack at the Winfield Cup side, juniors, seniors, whatever arises.
Returning from a long break in the NBL season, the Falcons made a sluggish start against Canberra. The defensive effort not matched at the other end, and missed opportunities gave the Cannons a 5-point advantage at half-time. But the complexion of the game changed in the second half. American import Derek Rucker found the target regularly after an indifferent first session.
Felt good in the first half, just some shots didn't go down, and sometimes it takes a couple shots to go down for you to finally kind of break loose and get your flow going, and that's what happened to me in the second half.
He was ably supported by captain Terry Dozier, with Tony Jensen and Marty McLean's defensive effort keeping the Cannons' Fred Cofield quiet. Delighted with the win, further good news followed with the Suns upsetting Illawarra and then the Cannons bouncing back to defeat the Gold Coast. The Falcons now have a comfortable break in 8th position, but are leaving nothing to chance, particularly against the Tassie Devils at home this Saturday.
Hobart have two good Americans. They're very athletic, and on any night they can compete with anybody in this league.
Hoping to reverse a $900,000 loss accrued over the last 3 years, Falcons management drew up a restructuring plan. To gain the National Basketball League's approval, a $200,000 cut in the Falcons' budget was required. This relied in part on the Newcastle Showground Trust, which manages the Falcons' home court, granting the club concessions.
We have come to an arrangement, and we're delighted with this, which allows the Falcons to go on with their restructuring and continue to play in Newcastle.
The restructuring also involves a shift in ownership of the Falcons to Newcastle interests, away from Sydney partners John Saunders and John Horsell, plus developing a broader shareholder base.
That will incorporate having a Newcastle-based chairperson and a new board of directors, which reflects the new ownership.
While the Trust is lending a helping hand to the Falcons, it's also a two-way street. Trust members recognise the vital role the Falcons play in helping to promote the entertainment centre.
Really, this centre exists because of an approach by the then owners of the Falcons to have a bigger venue. It grew into what it is after that. We do consider them as one of our anchor tenants.
With 6 games of the competition left, 5 of those on the road, and most of them against teams placed in the top 8, the Falcons face a tough run home. The task starts this weekend with the Doomsday Double, 5th place Adelaide tomorrow night and Perth Wildcats sitting 6th on Saturday. The Falcons are out to bolster their 11-9 record and consolidate their playoffs position.
We can take a big step toward the playoffs with even one win this weekend on the road. If we get both of them, we're in great shape, and really we're capable of winning at either place.
When Newcastle and Adelaide last met in April, the visitors snatched a 2-point victory. Wiseman says his team is ready to turn the tables.
Well, Adelaide in particular are a real double-teaming, aggressive defensive team, and they've got the best defensive yield in the league, so we know that we're going to be up against pressure defense, and we've been working at preparing ourselves for that.
As for Perth, the Falcons beat them on WA turf last year, and Michael Johnson's 8 3-pointers in this season's clash in Newcastle helped the home side can the Cats by 30 points. A win on Saturday would complete the trifecta for the Falcons. Wiseman says all players are fit for the road trip, Terry Dozier free of knee soreness, and Paul Kuiper over an ankle strain. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Heading towards a record-breaking 5 flags, Warners Bay was eliminated from the competition by Nelson Bay, which has come from 3rd to qualify for the grand final. Nelson Bay's quest to win its first flag has been helped by the return of Gary Adams and David Sims, while veteran ruck rover Pat White is seen as a key to a Marlins victory. But it's another White providing the motivation for Cardiff. Player coach Keith White will retire tomorrow, the Hawks eager to add to the flags won in 1979-80. Meantime, semi-finals in the Newcastle Rugby Union begin tomorrow, with Singleton up against Maitland, while on Sunday University take on Hamilton. And in soccer, the Northern New South Wales final series gets underway with tomorrow's match between Wickham, Croatia and Toronto, Awabba, while Hamilton take on Maitland on Sunday.
It was a tight tussle between old rivals Whitebridge in the Greenskirts and Warners Bay High. Whitebridge, the defending regional champs, led by 2 at the first quarter break and 4 points at the half-time bell, thanks largely to the teamwork of state rep Alison Sharp and shooter Alison Swan. Warners Bay maintained its focus, aggressive attack and at times a stroke of luck, keeping them in the race. But in the final quarter, Whitebridge forged ahead, pulling away by 10 to win the game 45-35. Warners Bay get another crack at the state knockout competition, however. With the Hunter being such a strong netball region, it's allocated 2 of the last 16 positions in the CHS Championship, so both sides will contest that phase later this year. Catherine Lamont, NBN News.
Having lost to Adelaide on Friday night, the Falcons needed to split the road trip to maintain their playoffs bid. They began well, establishing a 15-point break at half-time, and unlike the night before when they surrendered an 18-point advantage to the 36ers, managed to hold off Perth, which narrowed the margin to 8 at three-quarter time. Derek Rucker with a match-high 32 points and 8 assists, again provided the inspiration for the Falcons and outplayed his counterpart Ricky Grace. The Falcons' 92-83 win was the Wildcats' third home loss of the season and their first since the break for the World Championships. With former Kangaroo Mark Geyer on show, a crowd of around 10,000 saw Yamaita go to a 16-6 half-time lead, which was reduced by Wyong early in the second half. Any chance of Wyong repeating its major semi-final victory was gone, with Mark Jensen's clever work from dummy half, and then former Winfield Cup player Adam O'Neill crossing for his second to give Yamaita a 24-10 lead. Half Scott Murray then clinched Yamaita's second first-grade premiership, Wyong scoring several late tries, reducing the margin to 8. Meantime, in Group 21, Scone also turned round a major semi-final defeat to down Aberdeen 30 points to 18. Scone set a cracking pace in the first term, half David Madden combining with fullback Mal Evely, scoring the first of his 3 tries. Their dominance continued in the second term before Aberdeen mounted an unsuccessful comeback, unable to create Group 21 history in winning 4 consecutive premierships. Having suffered just their second loss of the year against Singleton last Saturday, Wanderers raised the tempo at training this week, knowing another defeat would end their season. Leading from the front is 33-year-old veteran Chris McClelland, who is determined to see Wanderers qualify for their 3rd consecutive grand final.
Personally, I've made this year definitely my last year, and ideally love to go out in the grand final and hopefully as a winner.
Winger Quinton Kidd, who scored a club record 26 tries this season, replaces the injured Andrew Sargent for Wanderers, who are also likely to lose several other players at the end of the season.
Being the strongest club, I anticipate a lot of our better players will form the nucleus to the Newcastle side in the Sydney Comp next year. So, I mean, in a way, their career at Wanderers is coming to a close as well, so it'll be sentimental for them.
Meantime, in hockey, West take on University in the Newcastle major semi-final tomorrow, while Souths play Tigers on Sunday. It's also semi-final time in the Northern New South Wales Soccer League, with Hamilton Olympic playing Wickham, Croatia, while Western confront Highfields.
It was a Group 3 rugby league decider that of course had to be seen. Foster Tuncoe took on Warhope right in the decider. And of course Warhope scored first. That was followed by Foster Tuncoe scoring next. The Hawks tri-fest continued after that. Them grand premiers.
Vincent, who recently made his first-grade debut, was dismissed for an alleged dangerous tackle, reducing a depleted reserve-grade side to just 12 men in their 22-12 loss to Illawarra. The presence of Vincent, the club's leading try scorer, is imperative in the reserves' push towards another grand final. Officials optimistic about tonight's hearing.
Well, viewing the video, I don't see any problems. I feel he should get off the chart.
Reserve grade clinched the minor premiership against Canterbury 2 weeks ago, but since then have had 2 losses. Injury and suspension throughout the club hampering their build-up to the final series.
Well, I think our preparation's been better last year than this year, but you know, that's up to me to pull that side back together again. I think as good a side as we had in '93.
Apart from the President's Cup players, Finch has 16 who have qualified for the reserve semis, including Tony Butterfield, who may be back earlier than expected after breaking his hand 3 weeks ago. Newcastle will play the winner of this Saturday's preliminary major semi-final between Cronulla and Canterbury, while the Knights play Eastern Suburbs in President's Cup this Sunday. The Australian Rugby League last night named a train-on squad of 39, made up of players not involved in the final series. One of the bolters was Newcastle halfback Andrew Johns, who today was still stunned at his inclusion.
It's a pretty good reward considering everything that's gone on the last couple of months or so. And, I'm still a massive outside. I don't think I've got much chance getting in, but it's good just to be recognised and to train alongside the blokes who are there.
He caps a magnificent season for the 20-year-old, whose goal at the start of the year was just to play a few games of first grade. Johns will be joined in the train-on squad by brother Matthew, Mark Glanville, Paul Harrigan, Robbie McCormack and Mark Sargent. Glanville was today receiving physio for a knee injury, and after making the squad in 1990, one of the game's most consistent back rowers is hoping for a different outcome.
Well, obviously a few injuries would help if in the sides that are still in the semis, but I guess I've done what I can and just hopefully the selectors will, name me.
Meantime, Knights reserve grader Shane Vincent was last night cleared of a dangerous tackle charge. The President's Cup side last qualified for the finals in 1992 when they finished 5th. To bet at that performance, Newcastle must beat an experienced East outfit, which contained 6 players from the side that won the competition last season. At their one meeting this year, Newcastle emerged victorious 28-6 and will go into the match at full strength. Meantime, Newcastle will contest the State League Division 2 netball grand final against Parramatta in Sydney tomorrow night. Newcastle hasn't beaten its opponent this year, but coach Bruce Linke believes an upset is possible if they can reproduce last week's form against Penrith. In rugby union, a grand final position is on offer tomorrow when Wanderers play Singleton, while Maitland face Hamilton on Sunday. And in soccer, Western and Lake Macquarie will play in the first of 4 quarterfinals this weekend tonight. 2 will be played tomorrow, while Zurich play Toronto on Sunday at 2:30. The first quarter was marred by a series of offensive fouls, travelling violations and poor shooting, keeping the score at 22-21 in Adelaide's favour, although Tony Jensen did his best to lift the standard. Down by 4 at half-time, the Falcons' third-quarter surge, led by Jensen, opened up an 18-point and possible winning break, but sparked by Robert Rose, the 36ers responded. The margin was reduced to 12 by three-quarter time, and with Adelaide keeping the pressure on at both ends of the court, Newcastle was outscored 25-8 in the final term, dropping the first leg of the infamous Doomsday Double. It was a season finale that typified Newcastle's year, so close, yet so far. Rod Wishart's intercept cruelling Waite's farewell and a deserved Knights victory. Following the match, it was a proud coach who, rather than discuss the Really appointment or possible legal action against the club, reflected on his 7 years with the Knights and the position he was leaving them in.
The hundreds of phone calls I've had and faxes of support
in relation to what's happened this season is most rewarding. 20,000 people have voted to come there every week or every second week and watch their football team play. It's because we played very, very well, I like to believe it.
Wade says the young local talent at the club, such as the Johns brothers who starred once again last night, leave Newcastle with a strong future. As for his own destiny, Wade is hoping to stay in the game.
In fact, when I look at this club over the last 3 years, it enthuses me about what I'm capable of achieving. So I've got no reasons to slink off into the deep dark forest and hide.
Meantime, incoming coach Mal really has shocked the English Rugby League public, resigning as coach of Great Britain. His announcement has thrown Great Britain's Ashes campaign into disarray, with the Kangaroo Tour only 5 weeks away.
It was a scoreless first half as both sides stood their defensive ground. Brothers were the first to break through. 8 minutes into the second half, lock Brad Lofts dummied successfully to keep the Cougars at bay. A one-handed pass from winger Brett Rankin sent Latter over the line. Casino's defence seemed to crumble, unable to catch Dean Skinner. Lofts wreaked havoc twice, breaking through the Cougars' defensive barrier. Andrew King sealing a crushing 26-0 victory for the Rams in the corner. Meanwhile, Ballina was unhappy after the Rebels' first try, claiming Mark Laurie got a hand to the ball before offloading to Darren Curry. Good passing kept the ball alive for Scott Blight across the line. Calling up skills from that other game some call football, Brad Mansfield put the Seagulls in front. The Rebels fought back, scoring 2 tries before an enraptured home crowd. The second half saw action of another kind. Bruised and trailing by 4 points, Mark Laurie dealt Ballina another blow. The Seagulls came back with 3 more tries, leaving a 2-point cliffhanger margin, but 5/8 Michael Randall charged through the Blues lineup to hand South Grafton a 36-32 victory. Giant Shoebridge, NBN News.
It almost turned into a costly nightmare, with bottom place Hobart outscoring the Falcons 24-8 in the final stages of Saturday night's match, sending the game into extra time. At training this morning, coach Tom Wisman offered no excuses for the lapse, but was pleased with the Falcons' winning reply.
And the pleasing aspect on the positive side is that when they were playing tough and when they had that momentum, we were able to find something extra and come back and turn the tide.
The man responsible for the turnaround was Derek Rucker. He hit 13 points in the extra 5 minutes, finishing with a match-high 41, keeping the Falcons on target for the playoffs.
He owned the overtime period like no player I had seen own a period of play yet this year in Australia.
Back on court today, the Falcons were preparing for the Adelaide-Perth Doomsday Double, with only North Melbourne having completed the trip victorious this season. Terry Dozier, suffering from soreness, and Paul Kuiper, a sprained ankle, didn't train, but are expected to be right for the trip to Adelaide on Thursday. Coded Operation Shell Shock, Curry's plans to demoralise Toronto in the first half of the grand final paid dividends. The Bulldogs triumphed due to an 18-0 first half lead.
Shell Shock was the talk all week, and then today it was history.
And Shell Shock continued last night as the team and their fans crammed into the Curry Workers Club to savour the victory. The Curry team, including 4 sets of brothers, were paraded for most of the night, all heroes, but there were none bigger than captain coach Steve Linnane, who believes this season's victory surpasses last year's.
We've struggled with injuries for the majority of the season, and we struggled to make third spot, and all of a sudden we find ourselves premiers, through sheer guts.
Having not won a premiership in 48 years, Curry have now won 2. These people believe they can make it 3 next year.
You got to roll, they want more. You can't keep them happy, can you? So if we can turn around and do that, well, all well and good. But we're happy with 2 at the moment, and we'll worry about 3 next year, I think.
Meantime, in Group 21 Rugby League, Scone down Singleton, while on the Central Coast, Umina trounced the entrance. Despite the midweek off-court dramas, it was a relaxed coach and team at training this morning. Tom Wiseman happy with preparations and believing this week's restructuring provides a positive for the players.
Securing the financial future is something that the players, I think, if anything, it will help the morale of the club. And I think all the players to a man feel a great deal of indebtedness to John Bushell and John Saunders for what they have done for the club.
Tomorrow night's match will be the Falcons' second last home game of the season. A win would cap quite a week for Matthew Alexander. Former national youth team member turned 21 on Tuesday, celebrating the day with a game of golf with teammates, who according to Alexander should stick to the basketball court. He and the team are wary of Hobart, which despite languishing on the bottom of the table, are capable of mixing it with the leading teams in the league.
They've beaten Perth at their place, so, you know, they can beat anyone on any given night, so it's going to be a tough game.
With a 62-48 half-time lead, the Falcons appeared to be coasting to victory. 7 minutes remaining, they led by 16, but costly turnovers and a remarkable Keith Nelson sparked a Hobart revival. While he hurt the Falcons on the inside, Darren Perry was damaging from the outside. Hobart's 16 unanswered points tying up the game, this three-pointer giving them the lead for the first time with 35 seconds on the clock. Terry Dozier then made it 108 each to send the game into extra time. Hobart's charge faltered, the class of Derek Rucker coming to the fore. He finished with 41 points, the Falcons still on track for the playoffs. Having sampled Winfield Cup success with Penrith in 1991, Mark Geyer will once again be chasing a premiership this Sunday. While the stakes won't be quite as high, Geyer is determined to help deliver the club's second first-grade premiership.
I feel more pressure here than I do in Sydney. You know, all I do in Sydney, because I'm expected to go out every week and do 4 or 5 big hits or score a try or set up 4, you know, and that doesn't happen that way. I seem to be 7 or 8 blokes on me every time I take the ball.
Geyer has been at Umina for 3 months after his controversial departure from Balmain earlier this season. In that time, Umina's home ground gate has been up 50%, his addition to the club of immense benefit off and on the field.
He comes up with a big hit and side picks up around him, and it just takes one of his dynamic runs and the side follows on with him.
The time out of the Winfield Cup spotlight has been just a tonic for Geyer, who says the Western Reds will provide him with the opportunity to relaunch his career.
I think I'll have the chance to prove a lot of people wrong over there and finally get out, and a lot of people didn't think I'd make it over there, you know. At one stage I didn't know if I would or not, but now I'm dead set on going. I've got a baby on the way and everything's looking rosy.
And the Group 21 decider will also be played this Sunday with Aberdeen taking on Scone. With Gaz's Tracy Clark forced out with an ankle injury, the Still City Challenge winners were always going to find things tough. After a tentative start, Gaz's in the grey had forged a 15-14 half-time lead, mainly through the efforts of goal shooter and coach Chris Parker, who made the most of every opportunity. But the third quarter proved their undoing. Brewers outstanding and scoring 8 goals without reply to establish a 25-18 lead at the final break. Shooter Rachel Buchanan and goal attack Chris Oates enhanced the lead in the final quarter. Brewers, coached by Lucy Wilcox, taking the grand final 32-23. Meantime, Singleton has qualified for the Newcastle Rugby Union Grand Final with an upset 27-23 victory over Wanderers in the major semi-final this afternoon. An intercept try to winger Jason Deves against the run of play gave Singleton the lead, which was enhanced with another 5-pointer right on half-time to Darren Hobden. A further try to hooker Mark Hall and Phil Gold to Cameron Williams wrapped up the game for Singleton, despite 2 second-half tries to Quinton Kidd and David Erb for Wanderers. The defending Premiers East set up their victory in the first half, leading by 25-0 at the break. The margin then grew to 29 as handling errors continued to thwart the Knights. But Newcastle did mount a belated second half charge, scoring 4 tries, finishing the season in style, but still 5 points down on the scoreboard. Meantime, the Adamstown Rosebuds run in the Waratah Cup has come to an end with a 3-1 loss to Warringah last night. A victory in the 6th round would have set up a meeting with Marconi, but 2 goals in the first 25 minutes to the Dolphins cruelled their chances. But there was success against Marconi earlier in the day. Adamstown's under-13s team, who were paraded last night, beating their Sydney counterparts 2-1 in extra time of the state final. And around 100 motocross enthusiasts converged on Barley Ranch Raceway north of Raymond Terrace today for the 3rd and final round of the state championships. The South Coast Paul Grant went into the final 3 heats with a clear lead in the 125 and 250cc classes, which was enhanced after the first 8-kilometre heat, while Queenslander Marlon Walker took the second. Go-kart racing has been the training ground for Formula One drivers for years. Today, more than 40 drivers from across the country did battle on the track at Raleigh.
There were 4 rounds with 2 races at each round. The first round was at Tamworth, the second was at Lithgow, the third round was at Oran Park in Sydney, and this is the final round.
International A class was already decided before today's final round began. 23-year-old Sandro Giotolvi from Sydney had won the event. Today he competed in the higher class Formula A, the division he'll contest at next year's International Kart Grand Prix, which will also be held at Raleigh.
We're getting ready for next year, for the International, because that's where it counts. That's where most of the world's best are here.
Drivers from Europe and England are expected to take part in the Australian event, which will be held next January.
The action continued while I was into the local netball grand final. Of course, there was up in the Newcastle competition. Of course, there was a battle of who wins.
After a horrendous error count last weekend against the Sharks, Newcastle has worked on improving their discipline this week. Confident they play their ability, they can topple on young and enthusiastic St George side, providing the motivation to remaining has been the lingering memory of last year's grand final loss. A lot of the boys there last year, you know, it felt like those last year for injuries tonight. Two expected to go. Onto the match as well, they do. Well, I'm desperate to call. Quite quiet for the grand. Finals, Jason and Martin, who will lead the club for the North Queensland Cowboys next year. Yeah, I like the premiership. Sure, I've made a lot of things. See how a couple of years. And doing the premiership with the great team.
Rucker collided with Sydney's Dean Uthoff in the 3rd minute of the 2nd quarter last night. The point guard completed the match, and while x-rays were inconclusive, Newcastle coach Tom Wiseman said today doctors believe Rucker has fractured ribs, which could keep him out of the game for 2 weeks. It topped off a frustrating night for the Falcons, Newcastle stumbling to a 116-94 loss. Falcons were never in the match, Sydney always comfortably ahead. Meantime, in cricket, Newcastle has recorded a comfortable win over the Hunter CHS side at University. Electing to bat, CHS scored 179 off their allotted 50 overs. Todd Campbell scoring 44 and Adam Logan tied 39, while paceman Jamie Heath and Simon Dillon captured 5 wickets between them. In reply, Newcastle lost just 2 wickets, scoring the runs in 39 overs, with David Willits unbeaten on 74 and Greg Charlton 43 not out. Running into a stiff breeze in the first half, a Christian Jones field goal gave Maitland a 3-0 lead, which wasn't retrieved until the 30th minute, a Craig Bates penalty levelling the scores. 2 minutes later, Singleton crossed for the first try of the match, winger Scott Delabozic giving the Bulls an 8-3 lead. Both sides added further penalty goals before the break. Singleton unlucky not to cross for another 5-pointer after a charge down from Darren Hobden. Using the breeze to their advantage in the second term, Taylor slotted another penalty goal before relentless charges by Christian Adams and Eddie Mower resulted in a try to halfback Matthew Bauer. Another penalty goal increased the lead to 17-11, which was maintained. Maitland's determined defensive effort holding the Bulls out in the last 10 minutes. The grand finals, Hamilton, Merriweather, Carlton and Wanderers all had victories.
This is the collision that has Derek Rucker walking on a fitness tightrope, and if he falls, the whole team could come down with him. Dean Uthoff has since been exonerated, but Rucker says it sets a precedent for other players, pointing to a hard-hitting final series.
It was a rough play. There was no penalty, so whatever comes of it, however, I'm not sure how each club will handle it. They could look at it and make up their own minds about, what they feel that they're allowed to do on the court now.
Rucker is undergoing intense physio in a bid to play for the Falcons against the North Melbourne Giants this weekend, a match that could decide the team's playoff fate. Rucker is confident he'll take the court, but his doctors aren't convinced.
We're looking probably 70-30 against. After being out of the league for 2 years and now getting a chance to come back and actually compete in the playoffs and being able to make a difference in whether or not we get there, I'm just not going to miss the game. So, simple as that.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Up by 18 points against Adelaide on Friday night, the Falcons appeared to be on track to repeating North Melbourne's feat of winning both legs of the infamous Doomsday Double road trip. But as was the case a week earlier, Newcastle squandered a handy lead, succumbing to Adelaide 90-85. The loss providing the motivation for Saturday's upset victory over Perth, their 3rd consecutive win over the Wildcats in the league.
We knew we had to win against Adelaide, we let it slip, but I think the guys obviously found that was enough motivation for them to come out Saturday night and perform really well and try and split the weekend.
One of the more spectacular highlights from the weekend was Jensen's effort on quarter time against the 36ers to put the Falcons within a point.
I had my eyes shut. No, it's just, coming down towards the end of the first quarter, you've got to chuck up a shot wherever you've got the ball. It's kind of lucky that it went in. I wouldn't back myself all the time against a shot like that. Just a lucky shot.
The Falcons got through the weekend injury-free and are now clear of Illawarra and the Gold Coast, but will play an exhibition match against a visiting South Korean team at Broadmeadow tomorrow night in preparation for their match against the Rollers. Unable to negotiate a deal with the proposed buyer of the club's ground and facilities, the Breakers board met last night and decided to stand down, appointing Alex McIntosh of KPMG Pete Marwick as administrator. Mr McIntosh will continue dealing with two prospective buyers, revealed today as the New South Wales Soccer Federation and an unnamed individual.
It does need a professional person like the administrator to wrap this deal up. And he last night, after talking with the board, feels that the operations does have a future.
Mr McIntosh will also meet with the club's unsecured creditors on Monday to announce his intentions, and then again in early October with a plan to rid the club of its debt, but it must be ratified by a majority of the unsecured creditors.
And hopefully that offer will be accepted by the unsecured creditors.
And if it's not?
Well, like we were at this time yesterday, we had two options. Either we put it in place and are successful, or we close the doors.
The Australian Soccer Federation today supported the appointment of the administrator and reiterated the Breakers will be given every possible chance to prove their viability. The team plays its first game on Thursday against Bankstown in the 6th round of the Waratah Cup. The appointment of a coach now not expected till the end of the month.
At 28 years old, Terry Dozier describes himself as a spring chicken. Maybe not a chicken, but this Falcon will play his 100th NBL game when Newcastle takes on the Gold Coast on Saturday night.
Oh, I'm pretty excited about it, knowing that this game could put us in, cement us in the playoffs. So whether it's 100 or 1, get it in the playoffs and get the win, I'll be very happy.
At training today, Terry's wife Kim was keeping an eye on the veteran. Terry has had 4 years in Australia, his first year with Geelong, the rest in Newcastle. The Falcons are on a roll after a strong away win against Perth. They should grab a final 8 spot if they play to their ability in the last 4 games.
We still have to play Gold Coast and Illawarra, the two threatening teams in our 8th position. So we feel very confident that we should get there.
The Cronulla club has been in shock this week following the death of reserve grader Ben Lysart. The 20-year-old who played in last week's win over Canterbury died in a freak accident attempting to stop a car rolling down a driveway. The effect of his death will no doubt be reflected in Sunday's game against Newcastle.
But I believe that they will play with a lot of emotion and to be quite honest, to be coming out of the ground at us, I think it'll be very difficult, especially a very difficult start for us.
If the Knights are to qualify for another grand final, they'll have to overcome Cronulla, who beat them in the second last round of the competition. But Newcastle's lineup is vastly different from the one that succumbed to the Sharks. All bar Stephen Cray to take the field on Sunday, the bench a measure of the Knights' strength.
We have got a lot of depth on our bench with Butterfield and Billy Puden and Chrissy Watson, plus a lot of the good young talent coming through in the 21s. Our bench is very good, and when we do make changes on Sunday, we won't lose anything in strength.
The Knights made a tentative start to the match. Fullback Robbie Ross, one of the many guilty of undoing the good work, attempting to force the pass early in the tackle count. It wasn't until the 29th minute that Brett Grogan posted Newcastle's first try with a 50-metre solo effort, shrugging off several would-be defenders. Returning from a broken hand, Tony Butterfield was called off the bench. The ensuing play, the ball from one of his early touches, resulting in a determined run from captain Jason Martin, giving the Knights a 10-2 half-time lead. A Cronulla penalty goal and try in the opening minutes of the second term, after a disastrous breakdown in communication in the Knights' in-goal area, levelled the scores at 10-all. Cronulla went in search of the field goal, but with the Knights struggling with ball retention, the Sharks had enough possession to eventually post their second, taking a 16-10 lead. A late try and conversion attempt failed to send the match into extra time, the Knights to play St George in next week's final. And after finishing down the ladder in the league's premiership, Hamilton and Wickham have surprised many in reaching the semi-finals of the knockout. With National Youth League hopeful Harry James, Olympics started a slight favourite. A tag that didn't last long, with Carl Friend snaring Wickham Croatia's opening goal in the 10th minute. 5 minutes later, Croatia grabbed another, John Tonkin finding himself in open space and making no mistake. 2-0 down at half-time, Olympic fought back in the second term with goals to Dale Turner from the spot and Andrew Krause. 2-2 at the end of regular and extra time. Penalties decided who would advance to next Sunday's final. Wickham-Croatia prevailing 4-1. The other semi-final will be played tomorrow between Highfields Azuri and Western. The awards night at the Belmont 16-Footers Club was attended by around 120 of the sport's players and hierarchy, including the chairman and chief executive of the Australian Soccer Federation. Edgeworth's Danny Gordon, Lake Macquarie's Murray King and Kavanagh were nominated for the Player of the Year award, the latter selected in his first full year of senior soccer in a season he wasn't going to start.
The last 2 seasons I didn't play well at all, and I didn't want to have a frustrating season this year, and I wasn't going to play if it was going to be frustrating. But I ended up playing. The coach, he taught me around, and fortunately it worked out for the better.
Lake Macquarie's Scott McElroy was chosen as the IEA Rookie of the Year, while Highfields Azuri's Joe Senkowski, Edgeworth's Bobby Namu and Bland were nominated for Coach of the Year. Bland's selection recognition for bringing Edgeworth from 5th last year to 2nd in this season's premiership.
Well, certainly surprised with Joe Senkowski and Bobby Numo, they're excellent coaches, and I'm pleasantly surprised that I received the award. I'm thrilled.
Northern Soccer League attention now turns to this Sunday's finals, with the under-18 starting at 11:15, reserves at 1, and Highfield's match with Wickham at 3.
Taree High in the white shirts started today's grand final as hot favourites. The school had won the Conveners Cup every year since it started 2 years ago and had convincingly defeated Broadmeadow High in the semi-final 5-2 earlier in the day. From the outset, Taree had more possession of the ball, spending much of the first half in Muswellbrook's territory. But given a scoring opportunity, Muswellbrook didn't waste it. Centre half Dean Burkett nailing a penalty shot. Muswellbrook went to the break 1-0 up, although Taree had chances to level the score. Taree did eventually break through in the second half, forcing extra time. With both sides remaining scoreless, Muswellbrook was declared the winner on penalty corners in the second period of overtime. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
After their second loss of the season, against Maitland last weekend, Broderick has made another bad start today. Down 8-0, but before they packed, took control in the 30th minute. The Premier's failure on the board with veteran from Blue Set Crops, Tony Holland's coming out with the spoils. Maitland fighter, Christian Taylor, continued to control Owen Everett for first half with a boot. Both in Jack, Cyril played with his goal kicking for the penalty goal, giving Maitland a 11 and 7 half-time lead. Taylor continued to dominate in the second half, hitting the ball in front of his forwards with Christian Adams and back row Ian Owen 2-step 8 outs in the pack, while Maitland had a territorially managed one for a sweating on 2 occasions, but the stop-start nature of the game hasn't helped the Premier as the career is of several including in back row of Phil McClellan, anyone disappointed in knowing that Saturday's grand final appearance will be Maitland's first since 1991. Around 200 for children were brought for Barrow basketball all stadium today for the beginning of a week-long clinic. It's many the Falcons were on board to assist in coaching the region's future talent. Tommy Jensen, just one with plenty of advice. And it was their first chance to miss with their Newcastle rivals, many of whom will be with the Climate game next season. Talks to continue during this week. There's only 2 players, Sean Dennis and Paul Simpson, that contracted for next year. Falcons General Manager Paul Thomas was in Ireland today said negotiations were going well, but here's another respect. Thanks to the NBL's salary cap, it would be difficult to again secure but about the rest of the piece.
Yeah, and of course we'll have a look at the year, the year 1995. And of course that's it for now, and from all of us here, good night.